Hello, welcome to Politics 20, Season 3, Episode 9, the EU referendum special,
Yeah.
um, which is obviously appropriately timed because it is the EU referendum. The postal votes slips have turned up for those of you who are postal voting. Mine is in my house, which is good.
Oh wow. So of course you're now part of the armed forces. So you postal vote.
Yeah,
So
well, I need to. I'll be honest, I was hoping we were going to get the day off to vote because it's quite a big thing, but they said no. So,
I'd imagine if the entire armed forces got a day off to vote, that would prove logistically impossible.
I imagine day off, but yeah, never mind. It's one of those things. I'll be postal voting. So yeah, we should I should point out we're still on season 3 because Corbyn is still leader of the Labour Party.
And that's our
And from
benchmark.
memory,
We will do
yeah, from
Corbyn
memory
watch at
that
some point during this program.
we said season 3 will last as long as Corbyn is leader of the Labour Party. I don't know what happens if he jumps ship and becomes leader of a Conservative Party on like one, if they walk across the floor.
I mean, him and
I mean, it's
Cameron.
unlikely, but I don't think we'll have to cross that bridge. I'll be honest with you, but
No, well, him and Cameron won't share a platform, but Cameron and Sadiq Khan will, which I found quite interesting actually. But I mean, I found that it's a little bit annoying because we always said, Corbyn's the last of the great what is it, believers in doing politics where you actually have convictions and you have principles, and that was what Corbyn was elected to as leader of the Labour Party to do. But he doesn't believe in the European Union. So this is sort of very contextual here about my argument is why was he elected to stand for what he believes in, and yet he stood there saying, oh yeah, all Labour voters should vote in. It's somewhat hypocritical of him.
it is a weird one. Yeah, it's I mean, I think it kind of in a way gets to part probably part of the issue of why we're having a referendum is it's now so far beyond party lines. It's just cut across everything, and like it's just there's no sort of rhyme or reason to who's in and who's out. There's a lot of backbenchers and some front benchers on all the parties. You see a little bit mixed. Although in fairness, the SNP seem pretty pro Europe. They seem pretty keen sticking to the party line, but
Well, that's because they're still part of the UK, so therefore they get a say in this. So yeah.
yeah. But I think SNP have always been very pro Europe from like hearing Sturgeon and Salmon speak.
Yeah.
I imagine I'd
Found it.
but to be fair, if we I'd never be called referendum independence, they can go and join. We're a little bit like playground friends, like friends with him or her. But then she stole my pencil, so now we're not coming to my birthday party. We have another referendum. I'm going to join up and double team the UK into some sort of terrible trade deal. It's that level really. It's quite difficult to talk about because you sort of bounce. I think obviously not to the in-depth level that we'll discuss on this particular show, but there's obviously come up in conversations with other people, and when discussing them, you sort of bounce between sort of serious points, and then I don't like the French, or I don't like the Belgian road network, or something sort of ridiculously childish or just like old school stereotypes from the 1920s. You just bounce between the two, and it's sort of ridiculous in a way.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I must admit some of the mudslinging that's going on at the moment. I mean, it is on one side of the aisle. It's sort of it's weird because you get sort of rational arguments, sort of saying that the Remain campaign will say something like, if we stay part of the EU, we're more likely to be economically better off. And then someone in the Remain campaign will say, yeah, and if we stay in the EU, we can definitely make sure that no one crosses our borders. And you just think, well, that's not entirely true. And then you've got people on the Brexit side, the people who vote Leave side rather, saying, oh yeah, if we leave, we'll have tighter control of our borders, which is potentially true. Then you got what's his name, Boris Johnson, saying, oh yeah, we can't buy bananas in sets of 5 or three or more because of the EU. And you just think, hang on, where are you getting that information from? Anyone can go down to a supermarket and buy a bunch of 5 bananas. It's just some of the statistics.
You have to buy grams. You have to buy them in grams rather than pounds. That's the real issue.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? He's like, damn it, we want our imperial system back. The system that doesn't work, but we want it back. We want to keep our miles and keep our pounds.
I should apologise if anyone is listening to this on YouTube in the future. I can hear a slight electronic beep in the background. It's in my house. I don't know how to stop it, so I've just left it.
It's your alarm getting off. Your parents didn't know you were back, so they reset the alarm, and you've just snuck in. That's what's happened.
They tried to keep me out, but there was a window left ajar. But no, it's such a weird one, because certainly something I've learned in this e-referendum campaign is that I thought the European Union was, the 28 states and confined to what is geographically Europe. But it turns out the European Union includes America and China and South America, because I hadn't realised that if we leave Europe and the EU, we're not going to be able to trade with Germany and France. That's what I keep getting told. But obviously, countries like America and China, Germany and France. So obviously, the European Union is actually every single country in the world, which is why you're allowed to trade with them. So if we leave that, then we're going to be completely out on our own. It's pretty worrying, really.
Well, hang on. Now, only a few months ago, sort of 12 and a bit months ago, we were sat here talking, and we both admitted which parties we voted for. Now, Blakey, will you tell our dear listener, or what viewer, which party you voted for in the general election last year?
I voted for the United Kingdom Independence Party.
And now, I want to be honest with you. Which way are you going to vote during the European referendum?
There's quite an obvious one that leads on from that. I mean, this is one of the things that actually kind of annoys me most. Is like we've got all this build up to referendum. Nigel has not been on telly. He's just disappeared. Like I was going to put money on him being on TV at least daily on either BBC or ITV, and he basically hasn't turned up to work.
Well, no, why? It's because he's not part of the official campaign. He set up the rival Leave campaign. So Vote Leave is now the official campaign. He's part of not Vote Leave. Like Boris Johnson and who's the other person? Michael Gove. They're people on the Vote Leave campaign. Nigel Farage is part of, what was it? I can't remember.
No to EU, I believe that's their website anyway.
What was it called, sorry?
The website is No to EU, so they're kind of phonetically like No to You, like kind of a bit French. Ironically, they've gone for a bit of a French spelling on their Leave the European Union campaign.
No to, but yeah, no, I see what you mean. No, but he's not part of the official campaign, therefore he can't be guaranteed airtime. Like Boris Johnson and Michael Gove and Ian Duncan Smith can be guaranteed airtime. Because they're part of the official Vote Leave campaign. But because UKIP aren't members of the official Vote Leave campaign, they've not guaranteed the airtime to make their arguments felt. But I mean, the thing is, they keep wheeling him out every now and then, Nigel Farage. They keep he's like someone's drunk uncle now, rather than sort of the voice of reason. Which I mean, to be honest with you, I don't think Boris Johnson's the voice of reason. Neither I think Michael Gove's the voice of reason. But I do think there are voices of reason on the Vote Leave campaign. You do wheel out Nigel Farage if you really do want a point hammered home. He will just say the same thing over and over and over again, just like a drunk uncle at a Christmas party. He will just stand there in the corner, talking the same stuff to anyone who will listen. And the problem is, so many people are listening to it.
I mean, in a way, you've got to feel bad for Nigel, but here's a man who is, whatever you think of him, I think most people would agree he's reasonably charismatic.
Yeah.
Some people hate him, but saying he's not charismatic would be a difficult position to defend. It was as Michael Gove beat him to a position of like, We need some inspirational leaders to get us out of the EU. Who are we going to pick? For us, no, Gove. Gove's the man we need.
Yeah. Michael Gove. He is the man we need. He is the guy who is more than happy to screw up education in this country. He is more than happy to screw up the justice system in this country. He is more than happy to screw up us leaving the EU. And to be honest with you, Boris and Michael Gove, I don't think it's going to make a huge difference. I'm going to vote in because I think we're better off working as we are at the moment than not. But I mean, if we leave, I don't think it's going to be as big a problem as the Remain campaign are making it out to be. I don't think that they're saying, oh, it's going to be a complete disaster. Well, it may be, but I don't think. I think it's 6 2/3 for me. It's going to make no real difference to me, and the taxes I pay, I don't think it's going to make a huge difference. But I do want to stay in because I think the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. But when you think about the people who are going to be leading the negotiations, if we were to leave the EU, as Boris Johnson, Michael Gove, and Ian Duncan Smith, that really does scare the hell out of me, because I admit I wouldn't trust the Tory party as far as I could throw any of them. But those three are particularly bad lot within a bad group of people. I just don't understand it. Why would we pick these people to lead this country, let alone do 2 years worth of the toughest negotiations anyone ever in government has ever had to do?
I mean, I wouldn't know what to suggest on that as to why we've picked them. I mean, some people who've got better lawyers than we do might say it's something to do with the fact that whether we stay in or out, money's corporate interest will remain our #1 priority as a country. But obviously I wouldn't want to make such sweeping statements because we haven't got a lot of representation on this particular podcast. But no, honestly, like, it sounds ridiculous, but I've had this conversation with other people. Like, one of the, I think, the great tragedies of the vote leave and whatever, the UKIP one or the official one, or just people who don't really care but just going to vote to leave anyway just because they, don't like the Belgian road network or something because it is quite poor. I have no, but whatever, even if we do leave, like, yes, we will initially avoid TTIP, but I'm sure some sort of BTIP version of British Trade and Investment Partnership with America, I'm sure that will be coming within the next decade, probably within the next 2 decades. Yeah. Like, I'm sure we'll still end up wound up in a load of weird trade deals. Like, I don't think this is. Sadly, there's a lot of people, I think, get the idea that leaving Europe is some sort of panacea for all our problems. Like, I'm sure our own politicians will still manage to absolutely ruin things. The only difference I really see is that outside of Europe, if you ruin stuff, then your own politicians can actually vote you out of it, or you can get out of it after a while with a change of government. But if, like, within Europe, like, legislation only ever really seems to go one way. It seems to get exacerbated, which on certain things like workers' rights, I'm sure is quite a good thing. But if you look at the things like the unification of the policing system, how you can have, a judge in Greece can now get you extradited if you have unpaid parking tickets or something, which is, I mean, yes, you shouldn't be not paying your parking tickets, but it sort of seems like a bit of a risk for, if you become a judge. I'm not saying you will. I don't think you're in any danger of doing that. Me neither. But like, is it really appropriate that we sit here and sign warrants for Romanian people because they've been literate? But parking tickets ones apparently is. It seems you're getting down to such nitty-gritty stuff on, like, what is essentially a continent, and you'll be dealing with slightly more important issues. It just, the thing is that, it's a weird one.
In America, you can, as a judge, you can issue a federal arrest warrant for people outside your state. But on top of that, it is then up to federal law enforcement to enforce that arrest warrant, not the local law enforcement. So there's a huge difference. But if we're not going to create a sort of European police force, well, not Europol, but like a proper federal European police force, then it makes
a low level one, because Europol does, like, high level terrorist and organised
Yeah,
crime.
but the FBI does that as well. They're not going to go to someone, they're not going to have an arrest warrant come on their desk to say, someone's got unpaid parking tickets from Arizona. He's now living in, Idaho. They're not going to go, oh man, we really need to catch this guy. They're not going to do it.
And he's been nicking Mars bars, the fiend.
But the thing is that, I completely understand exactly where you're coming from. There is a lot of bureaucratic nonsense within the EU, and I completely understand it. But we've led, as one of the few net contributors to the EU, because we are a net contributor, we have a larger voice within the EU. So we've led practically, I'd say at least a third of those bureaucratic decisions have been led by Britain. We're not hamstringing ourselves because as being part of the EU, because we've suggested a lot of this European Union legislation, and it just happens to have been passed because the likes of France and Germany agree with us. Because let's be honest, only us, France and Germany, are really net contributors to the EU. Spain, Portugal, Italy, Greece, any of the other like serious big nations within the EU are people who take money out of it. So we give the money to the EU. They're then given to less economically stable countries. But the price we pay is that we get a bigger talk about these legislations. So if we were to leave the EU, would we not end up with the same legislation anyway?
Well, yeah, this is what sort of worries me, is that we've just got a load of imbeciles at the top, really, who is, like I say, the only difference is, I think, outside of the EU, you can actually overturn that kind of stuff. When you're in, overturning something that 28 countries are signatory to is pretty tricky. And if you do vote to overturn it, it'll be like Treaty of Lisbon, Ireland style. Just have a re-vote 6 months later because you voted right.
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean. But you've got to think about it this way. When we don't believe in something, when the EU tells us you've got to do this, and we as British people, we as British government, don't think that's the right way to do it, we do.
I like the way you said "we" as the British government, as if you and me are at the table, like, oh yeah, by the way,
yeah, David Cameron's going to really listen to this. By the way, the MI5 do watch this podcast, so.
Well, I assume the CIA listening as well. They watch everything. So shout outs to our viewers in America.
Hey. But no, we do say no. The British government does say no. For example, prisoner voting. The number of times the EU have told us 5 times in 5 different European Union courts that we need to offer prisoners the right to vote. They are required by European Union law to vote. What have we done? Each time, every 5 times, we've gone to the EU and gone, "Nah, you're right." Every time we've refused to do that. So if it's something that serious, something that's ingrained within the sort of Britishness that prisoners aren't allowed to vote, we do turn around to the EU and tell them exactly where to stiff that idea. And I think that's a good thing. I think that even though we're not part of the EU, we still do have the ability to tell the EU exactly where to go.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I think one of the interesting things about the referendum is the internet is terrible tonight. It's going to be one of our worst episodes ever. My face is just completely pixelated. Like, I feel like I'm on an 8-bit video game.
Yeah, I must admit. By the way, we do have a viewer watching.
Oh, we do. One viewer.
Yeah, Paul is watching us.
Oh, sweet. Hi, Paul. How's it going?
And he did text me to say Matt's video is a bit blurry.
Yeah, it is. I can only apologise for this. I've got a new setup, and it's just not working. I may have to. Well, I would say if we're doing this again, but we're not going to be doing another one of these for at least 2 months. I
quite like it. We can talk about sort of other things that have happened in the meantime. But this is a Brexit special. This is a EU referendum special.
It is. However, the point I'm about to make is going to massively divert. So, oops. No, the point I was going to say is that I feel like the EU referendum is what's going on in the American elections now. Media,
Do you know what, mate? If you
Um,
weren't sounding like a very questionable guitar solo, I'd agree with you.
it's the same with a lot in big business and that were quite against Donald Trump becoming a Republican candidate. Um, and obviously he's done quite well. He's pulled it out of the bag. I think he is now officially the Republican nominee as of about 48 hours ago.
Yeah,
If I'm wrong, then I look like an idiot having said that. But I kind of feel it's like a weird one where there's sort of that slight rebellious isn't the right word, because I mean I don't want to describe a retirement age white man whose net worth is about 2 billion as a rebel in the same sort of vein as James Dean. I mean, yeah, fair enough. If he gets to the White House and just goes go-karting on the lawn, just like doing donuts in front of Secret Service, maybe I'll take that statement back. But he's, you know, it just a kind of there seems to be a lot of that kind of anti what the banks and their associated people are saying on both sides of the Atlantic. Probably was that kind of UKIP as well, like the last election and the European election. That kind of we are not from exactly the same bubble as everyone else, because ultimately, and she's going up against Sanders, who's just being completely ignored by the media, and Trump, of one of the world's greatest self-publicists, or I don't know if he's one of the greatest self-publicists, but he's definitely one of the most enthusiastic self-publicists. Like, his favourite topic of conversation is evidently himself. And he will talk about it as loudly and as long as possible. So, obviously, it didn't quite work. Sanders seems like a slightly more reserved man, but it kind of seems to be a little bit of a similar vein on kind of all these things. I don't know if that's just me. I don't know if that's me with my tinfoil hat. And headphones, obviously, is part of my look. As like being a bit conspiracy theorist, or if there has been a little bit of that going on. Because we've seen like
point out to everyone watching that actually there is tinfoil inside Blakey's baseball caps. Every one does have tinfoil inside it, and he does wear tinfoil inside his army helmet as well. It's just a thing, you know. It's just a thing. I wouldn't worry. Wouldn't read too much into it. It is just a thing.
It keeps my brain safe from all those cosmic waves they're sending from the other side of the moon on the dark side you can't see. But obviously I've researched this really well because I've read some stuff about it online. There was no sources or references, but it seemed pretty legit. So.
Yeah. In fact, you know what? You're reading from the same blog that Boris Johnson reads from when he makes statements about the EU.
Yeah. And that's whichever side of the debate you're on, it is embarrassing.
Yeah. Like, it's so embarrassing.
Even if you're on the I'm not going to vote side, which under normal circumstances in British election like history is a fine side to be on, even in this one, because it's so crucial, it's embarrassing then as well that you're not actually getting involved in, because unlike a general election, which no one cares about anyway, like this has a bit of fallout to it, at least in the short term. So
I just like the idea of them being, you know, for example, I think most people I speak to have a voice. They say, you know, oh yeah, I'll vote in or out. Okay, the majority of people, you're absolutely right. And you sit there, and you have these great discussions with people who are both in and out, and you have these fantastically different points of view. And you talk with someone who's not going to vote, and you genuinely do think, why are you not voting? Do you not understand? Like, this is the most important decision of our generation. Why are you not voting? What is wrong with you? And it's literally just like that. And they think, oh my God, maybe I should be voting. I don't know which way to think, because the general mudslinging that goes on, the crassness in both sides of the argument, and you just sit there and you look at it and you go, do you know what? George Osborne genuinely doesn't know that house prices will go. Actually, this is an interesting thing. George Osborne said that house price growth will go down by 18%. House price growth, that means the difference. So, for example, you know, house prices went up 12%. We're talking about 18% of that 12%. So it'll go down, what, to 16% growth? Sorry, not 16, to 10% growth. Okay, it's what I don't get. Is people don't understand it. They think that house prices will shrink by 18% if they leave the EU. That's not what he's saying. You know, the Vote Leave campaign grabbed it and went, yes, this is awful, this is dreadful. And most people your age and my age went, actually, do you know what I could do with house prices going down by 18%? It's like, that's not the way to invigorate the youth to vote in. It really isn't. People don't understand the difference.
I know.
Price grow's different.
I was amazed that didn't become their absolute slogan. Like, yeah, get out and house prices will drop. Like, anyone aged, well, statistically, anyone aged like 29 and under, and a lot of people aged 35 and under in the southeast were like, oh yeah, brilliant, dropping house prices. Let's get rid of France straight away. It was the absolute masterstroke in advertising, and it comes from the other team.
Yeah, exactly. Honestly, if house prices, thing is, I'm torn, right, because I am an estate agent, so I sell houses for a living. So I'm torn between being young and not owning a house and wanting to own a house, and the idea that house prices may go down, but I need to sell them in order to buy a house. So I can't go to clients and say, yeah, housing market is pretty difficult at the moment. Probably best to leave it for a few years before you sell, because then house prices may have stabilised by then. That's not what I do. I go, yeah, the market's really hot at the moment. You need to sell, and buy. It doesn't work like that for me.
Like, I feel like with the house price thing, it was almost the most ridiculous, like, sort of Daily Mail like example they could have done. The only way I feel this debate could get more ridiculous is if people just start like sort of trolling, but with a keep a poker face, so people don't know they're doing it. Like, yeah, if we vote to leave, girls will get hotter, and if we vote to stay in, men will get more ripped. Like, basically, until the debate arguments become the things you see on banner adverts on the internet. Like, yeah, do you know if we vote to stay in, you can make £400 a day from your house. Like, it's the only way it could get more ridiculous than it currently is.
It's like, you're absolutely right. It's like those banner adverts on the internet. It's Boris Johnson going up to the screen and saying, if we stay in, we will let a lot of people from areas of the world where their penises are smaller, and therefore the average penis length in the UK will go down. And you think, that's going to make no difference to me, but I want to vote leave because of it. You know, it's like, what? What are you guys talking about? Why are you guys genuinely thinking these are good arguments?
The classic one on those banner adverts is always it's like, insert profession, hate hurts. It seems like dentists hater. One individual finds a way to perfectly white teeth. Click to like this. Politicians hater. One voter finds a way to perfectly good political system. Click to find out.
It'd be David Cameron going up to the camera with big white teeth and going, "If you vote to leave, you will never find out why my teeth are so white."
Like, yeah, it's sad in a way, but something so important is also so comical.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. You know, for example, Boris Johnson was challenged because he's going around on his battle bus with, you know, we give £350 million a day, or £350 million a week to the EU. Now, statistically, that is correct. However, it does not take into account the money that we get back from the EU, the rebates and the subsidies that we get back. So technically, it is correct, but technically it's a false statement to use, because it's, in a way, lying, because it is just actually telling them, yes, we give this money and we don't get anything for it. It's just ridiculous. But so he got challenged, like, that's false advertising, and he goes, no, it isn't. Well, yes, it is. If you had that on a TV, the Advertising Standards Agency will pull it. In fact, they've tried to put it on TV and it has been pulled. It's like saying, oh yes, your house might be falling down, but you know, you've had people paying £500 a month in rent on this house, and therefore it's been worth, you know, let's tot up the £500 a month you've been getting, and it's just a stupid statistic to be using. But as you say, it's become so ridiculously comical. I don't know. Are we really better off outside, or are we better off in it? It's difficult to say, because trying to wade through all the sludge that both sides are saying is impossible.
I mean, I think they should just, you know, go for stuff that's true, like remain in the UK, jobs for bureaucrats. People are going, oh yeah, I wouldn't mind a job as a bureaucrat. Like, take money in Brussels, give money out. Yeah, I'll sign up for that. It's stuff that is 100% true, because there's a lot of it. You know, or on the flip side, vote leave, get a job as a border guard. So, you know.
Oh yeah, like they're going to increase the amount the border force have. So I saw the other day, we've got 5 clippers patrolling our borders? 5. France have 40, and the Italians have like a couple of hundred. I think that's just. I mean, where is our centralised government going? Yeah, do you know what? Five border force clippers. That'll do. You know, that's fine. You know, France have got 40. They can patrol their own shores. We don't need to do it to ours. It's like it's not how it works. It's genuinely not how it works. Look at the Albanians coming in the other day. A lot of people, actually, that's a good point. Everyone on the vote leave side said, "Oh yeah, you know, this kind of thing. It always happens because we're part of the EU." It doesn't happen because we're part of the EU. It happens because people smugglers say, "We've got a boat. You're desperate. We'll get you to the UK." Whether we're part of the EU or not, that's not going to change a thing. That's what people don't understand. Is immediately the Vote Leave campaign seized on it and said, you know, this is a prime example of why the EU is wrong. And it's just kind of thinking, it's not an example of anything. It's an example of people trying to make money off slavery, and that's it. You know, it's just ludicrous.
It is. Because it's quite easy to forget that the sort of the migrant crisis in Southern Europe and that is still ongoing. Like, it's not really on TV right now, but obviously there's however many hundreds of thousands of people who are in the European Union, Turkey, and then, you know, the constant influx stream. I'm not sure what word to use, but basically people getting on boats in Turkey or on the Mediterranean and getting into Greece or one of the many Greek islands. Like that's still ongoing, and it's not even registered on the news anymore. But it's clearly still quite a serious issue, which is weird because I actually thought the migrant crisis would be one of the things that sort of gave the Leave campaign a lot of credibility. It's a little bit cynical and quite sad, but the sort of, is Europe a ticking time bomb? Well, let's not wait around to find out. It's, you know, it's it's very lazy and quite an anti-humanism, but quite an easy attitude to take on these kind of issues, because evidently that's not an issue that's going to go away overnight.
No.
But it's not even registering, which I think in a way is credit to both parties, that they're not really. It sounds horrendous that they're not mentioning the plight of hundreds of thousands, but
I suppose
the sort of politicisation of poverty, I'm glad they've kind of avoided it, really.
I suppose the interesting thing is they have avoided it, and that's because it's a crisis rather than anything that's, you know, you can't really politicise crises. It's one of those things. It's kind of an unwritten rule of politics. If it's a crisis, you don't tend to try and politicise it. You just knuckle down, and it's a bit bipartisan. You sit down, and both sides sit there and go, right, okay, this is what we need to do, and this is how we need to act on it. The fact is that even with the migrant crisis, we're an island. And that's probably the most important thing that you know, that the migrant crisis doesn't involve the EU. The EU has a rule. It's the first. In fact, the United Nations has a rule about the first. You have to apply for asylum in the first safe haven you come to, which for a lot of people is Greece, is bits of Turkey. You can't apply in all of Turkey because it's, you know, some of it's at war. But you know, you can apply in Greece, Italy. You have to do it there. By the time these migrants, these refugees really have reached France, they've lost their right to claim asylum there, and you know, that's why you get the jungle in Calais, because they can't get across the border into the UK. You know, border control in both France and the UK just won't let them. You know, that's not an EU thing. That's just a desperation thing about trying to get to the UK because we're economically better off than most of the rest of the European Union. Or in fact the rest of Europe, stuff the EU. It's not an EU issue. It's a global crisis. It's a global refugee crisis, and that's why neither side are using it. Is because they recognise that actually it is not a European Union crisis. It's a global crisis that we need to tackle, but we don't need to tackle it by taking just 20,000 people in. We need to tackle it by going in there, sorting out the camps, sorting out all the horrific things that happen in the camps in Turkey, and saying, right, okay, this needs to stop, and we need to take as many people, as many vulnerable people out of that camps as we know that we can take. And again, that's not a European issue. That's not a European Union issue. That's an issue that we, as a government or as a people, have said, that's the right way to do it. We need to do it that way. But 20,000 is just not enough. You need to be taking in 2, 3, 400,000. And yeah, okay, I admit there's a possibility that these guys, these refugees, could be on benefits for a significant amount of time. But we're not talking about people who just want to come here because it's economically better off, and they're not coming here for for our benefits. We're talking about doctors. We're talking about lawyers. We're talking about professionals who had jobs in Syria, who had jobs in Iraq, where their homes were just destroyed. It's not a European Union thing, that issue. It's completely separate from the debate, and I think I've got to have a huge amount of respect for both sides for keeping it separate for the debate from the European Union debate.
Yeah, I think that's quite a good point. It's probably one of the most intellectual points you've had on this show ever. But
yeah, sorry about that. I'll dumb it down a bit.
I was going to say, it's remarkably out of character for this show, but yeah, no, it's a good point. But yeah.
But yeah, I don't know where to go from there, if I'm being honest.
No, well, there's a few other topics we need to cover. Obviously, one of them being celebrity gossip.
Yeah.
But I feel like ultimately, like with the referendum, it's kind of ideal for this show because we can talk about it ad nauseum without ever really commenting on anything in particular. Because there's just there's so many issues it arises. I was going to say arouses there, but that's probably not the right. It's not really the right phrase.
Arouses.
Tangential things which are of interest to some people, but yeah, one of the things that I thought was interesting come out of, I think it was Juncker recently about the EU, was they're going to ban extreme right-wing parties from voting even if you get voted in.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I read it and I was like, this sounds like the sort of lunacy you see from an extremist side of a debate. But I'll try and pull it up on the old Google machine.
Well, I have to be honest with you. I remember having this conversation with an ex that the idea of you can't really use Marxist or what's the extreme right wing, fascist. You can't. Those words are taboo. To use Marxist and fascist, I don't think they should be taboo. I think the idea of being an extreme right winger, you got extremes of every political spectrum. You got extremist Christians, you got extremist Muslims. Even religious spectrums, you got extremists. And the idea that labelling someone as a fascist, you should suddenly completely disregard their views, I think is wrong, because they have some good points to make. And again with a Marxist, they have some good points, and sort of suddenly say, oh, you're a fascist, absolutely none of your points are valid. I think that's wrong. But that's how
I think that's an issue. I think that's an issue that affects quote unquote young people and our generation quite significantly. But they kind of, I think it's no platforming is the term. I.e., like if a controversial speaker is going to come to a university, have a protest before they come, so that they're not actually like their speech or something gets cancelled. Like it seems to be like a little bit sort of worryingly prevalent in some places, and it's just, I agree with you. Like there's a lot of people who, if you realise that if they find out that someone is kind of against what they say on a few issues, they sort of just completely cut them off on all issues, which is, well, it's kind of myopic, because it kind of, like, obviously we're in favour of that kind of stuff. That's why we did a show, and we agree on most things actually. But it's kind of it's like a sort of phobia of discourse, and it's almost worrying that your worldview might be challenged and overturned. Obviously not by people with linguistic skills, either you or I. We're not going to be overturning anyone's views, but good orators might be able to do that.
No, I completely agree. I think that the idea of no platforming is wrong. I think the idea of getting someone up on a stage to get their views and then someone else on the stage picking those views apart one by one is better than not having that person on stage to begin with. Because I think it's, no platforming is wrong. Everyone has a chance for free speech. We live in a world now where free speech is okay in the majority of countries, China notwithstanding. And I think it's important that people get the opportunity to exercise their right to free speech. I mean, if they exercise hatred and all that kind of thing, then I think that's wrong. If people were to say we hate people, but that's their opinion, and I don't think we should say, well, you're wrong to hate, and therefore we should be no platforming you. We should just be telling them, look, you have a platform to talk about, just don't incite hatred. It's just common courtesy. Interestingly,
I found the article. Sorry, I found the article I was looking for. Not to cut you off, because what I was saying was good. Now this is from Breitbart.com, which is obviously a right-wing news outlet. However, it's not completely ridiculous. I think as a general trend, some quite a bit of what they say is at least accurate, even if I don't agree with what it says as a whole. So it's I'll read the whole title: Showdown full colon, not a semicolon. EU vows to use new power to block all elected, quote, far-right populists from power. The president of the unelected executive arm of the European Union, so sneaking in a little bit of anti-democratic stuff there, has vowed to block all right-wing populists from power across the continent shortly after acquiring the power to exert, quote, far-reaching sanctions on elected governments. Jean-Claude Juncker, the president of the EC, promised to exclude Norbert Hofer, who is MEP, leader of the Austria's Freedom Party, the FPO, from all EU decision-making if elected. There will be no debate or dialogue with the far right, the Liberal bureaucrat told AFP. I don't know who AFP are.
Association of Foreign Press.
Oh, see, every day's a school day. So yeah, it's kind of ridiculous almost, like, oh, have you been voted in? To actually vote, which however does add it to my list of things like being a Sinn Féin MP of ideal jobs to have, where you're literally not allowed to do any work. Like, you get paid, you don't do any work. Like this. I
thought we established that because they didn't take their seats in the Houses of Parliament, they weren't paid.
I thought they were. Well, we don't know. Maybe this Norbert Hofer guy, maybe he's paid £100,000 a year plus expenses on the express condition he doesn't do any work.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah,
he's living the dream, because don't forget MEP salaries are significantly higher than MPs.
Yeah. You know that some of our £50 million a day does go towards his salary.
Exactly. I mean, and fair play to him individually. He's pretty much won out. But it's this is what I wanted to find, because this is a classic example of the kind of hysteria you get around the EU and their they often accuse of being pretty left wing, left leaning as a political organisation. I think it'd be hard to argue against that statement.
Right, I agree.
In terms of them being left leaning, but yeah, like we're gonna. It's just like quotes of like far-reaching sanctions on elected governments. It all sounds so sinister. It
does. And it's an example of the ridiculous mudslinging that's been going on during this election. I think that you're absolutely spot on. The language is horrific. The language is built to be scaremongering. It's not there to build confidence in either. The idea that what the Remain campaign should be doing is saying, look, we need to build confidence in the EU. It does create jobs. It strengthens our position on the political sphere. Rather than doing that, they're just saying, if we leave, we're screwed. They're just saying, look, house prices will go down. Well, house price growth will go down by 18%. The economy will tank. We'll be into a recession. Manufacturing output will slow down. We're going to be at the back of the queue for all the trade deals. No, that's not. That's not how you build a campaign. You build a campaign on saying, look, over the last 4 years, the EU has created 30,000 jobs in this country. Well, not created directly, but has been a contributing factor into 30,000 jobs into this country. We sign more trade deals as part of the EU than we do not as part of the EU. So, for example, as a bloc, we negotiate trade deals with China. As a bloc, we negotiate trade deals with Africa. As a bloc, we negotiate trade deals with the United States. Now, yes, I agree that we negotiate our own trade deals with smaller countries. Norway, for example, Russia, for example, we don't have many trade deals with them, and we certainly don't do them through the European Union. So, it's like saying, we are stronger together. I don't disagree with that statement, but saying that we're weaker, not as a part of it, is the wrong way to go about it. Yeah, if you really do believe that we're stronger as part of the EU, then say the statistics that prove that we're stronger as part of the EU. Don't say, well, this could happen if we leave, and this also could happen if we leave. It's not the right way to go about it. It's scaremongering. It's the wrong language to be using. But the thing is, because the Leave campaign are using it, because the Leave campaign are using this language that says, if we leave the EU, we will be better off, and as part of the EU, anyone could come in and take your home because it's not really your home if we're part of the EU. And that's scaremongering. That genuinely is just awful language. But because the Leave campaign are using it, the Remain campaign are saying, yeah, that seems to be working. We'll use that language too. It's not right. I don't get why they're using it.
No, I mean, the Remain campaign was the one that was labelled Project Fear by quite a few people online. Just for the sort of, because I think mainly because they started making those statements first. I don't think they've got a monopoly on the outrageous or the outlandish, but they definitely they sort of started it. I found another quote from Juncker. I'm starting to think that the Vote Leave campaign is pretty much the anti-Juncker campaign. This was from May 2016, which is this year, so it's sort of relevant. Jean-Claude Juncker, I'll read it. This is from express.co.uk. Has issued a thinly veiled, it said broadside to Britain's democracy. Basically, he's attacked us. He accused British politicians of being, quote, part-time Europeans who listen to their voters too much. Which, again, this guy, what's he doing? Like, I know it was Juncker who accused Farage of being a rabble-rousing populist, to which the response from Farage was something along the lines of, yes, it must be terrible to have people vote for you. Obviously, like, a bit of a dig at Juncker's unelected position, but like, it's almost playground, but it's kind of a weird mix between like playground and then like Bond villain. It's like, oh, you listen to your voters too much, Mr. Bond. Like, the Treaty of Lisbon results are in. I've been expecting this. Like,
no, but the thing is, Farage was the one who, when Juncker was appointed as president of the European Union, was the one who said, nobody knows who you are.
Yeah, which I found quite reminiscent of, do you remember that celebrity who had a meltdown on Big Brother years ago and was like, who are you? Who are you? Like, loads of times over. Like, that's pretty much what he did. He was just in Parliament like, yeah, who are you? It's the same man who he called a middle-aged bank clerk.
Yeah, that was it, yeah. Honestly, Farage came up with such a great comment, and it was brilliant, because, honestly, they had a thing on Have I Got News For You about the race to become the next European president. And they were talking about the fact that we all thought that Tony Blair was going to apply for the job. And they had literally a photo of one guy, and it's like, this is, whatever his name is, and then they changed the colour of his tie. They changed the colour of his tie like 6 or 7 times, and just read out a different name. Same photo, different coloured tie, and read out 6 or 7 names. And you're absolutely right. Nobody bloody knows who Juncker is. Isn't it John Klaus or something like that, Juncker?
It's Jean-Claude. And he's got a double-barreled first name, so I don't know if he's really posh or just really French, even though he's from Belgium.
His mates call him JC.
Yeah, he's got a mixtape coming out 2017.
It's DJ JC. That's it.
Yeah, but
no, sorry, MCJC. What was I thinking?
There's a lot of C's there. I like that. Yeah, it's good. And you see BMW. I don't know if that's true.
But But yeah, I mean, I think some of it is just ridiculous, but it's quite funny actually. I think it's hilarious, some of the stuff that goes on, because at the end of the day, people are going to vote what they think and what they I don't think that people are going to sit there and believe either side as a result of scaremongering. I think that a lot of people. I genuinely don't think a lot of people have changed their minds during this vote. I think that a lot of people thought about it last year when they voted in the general election, were thinking about the possibility of an EU referendum, and they've made their minds up a good 12, 15 months ago about which way they were going to vote in this referendum. And I think that the result of the polling that says that they're neck and neck is genuinely as a result of more people coming out of the woodwork for vote leave. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think that a lot of people have now come out and said, this is actually what I want us to do. Well, I'm going to go out and vote for this to happen. I don't think that a lot of people are sat here. I genuinely don't believe that a lot of people have been taken in by the scaremongering tactics from either side. I genuinely don't believe that, because honestly, you would have to be, if you hadn't made up your mind this time last year, if you hadn't genuinely and you changed your mind within the last 12 months, you do have to be or in fact, no, not in the last 12 months, okay, last couple of months, you do have to be at the shallow end of the gene pool to have changed your mind in the last few months, because it's not, you can make constructive and intelligent arguments for both sides. The fact is, for the last 2 months, we've heard nothing but filth, trash, and garbage thrown at each other by both sides. We've heard no constructive, politically motivated or otherwise arguments over whether we should stay as part of the EU or leave it. And to have changed your mind on the basis of the fact that you can no longer buy your bananas in bunches of 5 is pathetic. It's just ridiculous. And I do genuinely think that people who've changed their minds in the last couple of months shouldn't be allowed to vote, because you will have made your mind up months ago.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I mean, obviously, I was pretty outraged when I found out I couldn't buy my bananas in bunches of 5s, and that was a real swing factor for me.
Did you go and buy a bunch of bananas in a pack of 3 just so you could?
I bought 6. I chucked one straight in the bin. I wrapped it up in a bag for life and chucked it straight in the bin. But no, I totally agree with you, and I think also kind of sometimes stuff in politics and in global life seems to happen. Sometimes it seems to happen quite slow, but since the European election and the general election, not a huge amount's really changed in Europe, because the migrant crisis was happening at that point, and that's kind of obviously it's been exacerbated, but it's not new. There's been no major economic threats that have been so unavoidably obvious that they've made it to the 6 o'clock news kind of thing. As in, there hasn't been in the last 12 months. There hasn't been another bailout anywhere that isn't Greece. Greece may have been bailed out. No one really knows, or it's kind of everyone's. It sounds ridiculous, but everyone's apathetic about, Greece has been bailed out. People are like, all right, cool. What's on telly? You know what I mean? If say Spain or Italy or someone had to have a bailout, or another country that hadn't previously been bailed out at all, and the economic situation was obviously deteriorating, which, I mean, it could be. I'm not informed enough about it, but it's not deteriorating so much that it's on the 6 o'clock news. So that's that. And like, it sounds horrendous, but the biggest events have been terrorist attacks. But ultimately, neither side would, even in an election as ridiculous as this one, no one would be able to actually say, oh, this will go up or down based on EU membership, because it would be so far from reality. It would not only would it be almost sick given the actual nature of the events, just no one would take it on board. Like, I'm not worried that we're going to vote to leave the European Union and our like international policing stuff where we share like most wanted terrorist list is going to go up in smoke. I'm not denying that it might have been slightly easier to set up in the European Union, but I think people are going to go, if we're not in a free trade deal with you, we're going to bring like terrorist attacks like that. it would just be moronic.
Yeah.
I mean,
No,
I'm sure some of that information probably goes through. Yeah, I mean, there hasn't been any major change in the last 6 or 12 months, but the rioting appears to have died down in Greece, or if it is, it's not being on TV.
Yeah, but it's gone up in France.
Yeah. Overall, rioting stocks have remained level.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. It's less rioting in Greece and more in France. So therefore, we've just sort of evened ourselves out.
So EU rioting has remained stable.
In fact, we could just say that the Vote Leave campaign could be saying, you know what, if you stay in the EU and no one's rioting in Europe itself, then someone's got to be rioting in the UK because it's got to balance itself out somewhere.
Yeah, London 2012 or 2011, whenever it was. There'll be free trainers for everyone. Don't nick a bag of 11p rice though, you will go to jail.
Yeah.
Was that chap who nicked me a Tesco value rice and ended up in a cell?
Yeah, I love the idea that he went into Tesco's to loot the place and all he could come out with was a bag of Tesco's value rice. I mean, the guy must have really been desperate for a chicken korma that day. Had all the ingredients at home and just needed a bag of Tesco value rice in order to, go home to his wife and go, look what I got! I got the final ingredient! And she's gone there going, yeah, I got it from like Waitrose earlier on.
Yeah, I see that as a failing of the British educational system, but our criminals are like, I feel like he does of nicking carbohydrates, which is a good food source. Like he could have gone for like finest quality panettone, but instead he's gone for value rice. Like at a basic food level, they kind of fill roughly the same gap. But he just hasn't thought about the economics of it. He hasn't factored in things like, how much physical weight can I carry? I need, and volume. I need to get the most amount of like financial reward. Training space is limited. It just winds me up really. He's just a complete fool.
Oh no, I'm not going to disagree with you on that. He was a total moron, but I think we're getting a little bit off topic here, talking about the total idiocy of the London.
Well, no, because I've heard that if we vote to leave or vote to stay, we either will or buy rice anymore. So I've heard both parties, both campaigns saying stuff about that. And we will only be able to buy rice in batches of 3 and 5.
Oh dear!
I can have 1,000 of your 3-grain bags of rice. Oh, well, thank you, sir. Yeah, come out back. Like it's.
But the inflation growth on the bags of rice will drop by 18% if we leave the EU.
Yeah, first time rice buyers will be having a bonanza. Like honestly, I feel like we should draw this episode to a close. Just because we've mentioned many times in the last hour about how ridiculous this all is, and even we now are just talking in circles about moronic things that both parties are doing. We're like. It's so easy to avoid the issues because A, no one knows what they are, and B, whatever issue you can choose, you can have, in theory, credible sources like the IMF or universities or NGOs or big names such as like economics like that Max Kaiser chap, or who's that guy who does all the money saving advice? He's pretty popular about money. Like you can get, in theory, credible sources on both sides saying, and it just makes you sort of just bored of the whole thing. So do you want to do celebrity gossip quickly?
Yeah, sounds good to me. Apparently Amanda Holden had photoshopped a bikini shot.
Well, yeah, she did a naked thing. It was like a toast one, but for some sort of vegan thing. I imagine it was Peter, people for the ethical treatment of animals. But obviously, all the headlines just like Amanda Holden gets naked, and people were like, brilliant. What's the cause? Don't care. So,
I mean, to be honest with you, she is like in her 40s. So, do you know what? I'm all right, mate.
Yeah, but and the Kardashians are still all alive, so that's good. Like,
is it good? Is it good? Let's be honest. Really.
I'm waiting for the Kardashians to come out on the Trump election thing because I feel like that is because they will inevitably surely get asked about it on some sort of television interview. Or
Wasn't someone talking about Kim Kardashian possibly being Donald Trump's running mate? I'm
I'm pretty
sure
sure that was internet trolls creating what could have been the greatest rumor of all time. Um,
that.
the
No,
sad
I'm
thing
sure.
is, I actually think I would probably assist Trump's likelihood of getting voted in if Kim Kardashian West was his vice president. I think that would increase the number of people voting for him, which is, like when a long time ago there was a poll online to see where Justin Bieber would perform his next concert, and the winning country with about 80% of the vote was North Korea. And
Yeah,
then you found out a few months later that that poll had been created by trolls. So it was trolls trolling trolls.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I feel like that'd be happening in real
The
life.
voting vote base, but yeah, I see where you're going from.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
feel like that'd be
exactly.
in real life if Miss Kardashian ran with Trump, because if the two of them were together, they probably would get in. I mean, Trump might
Yeah,
get in anyway, but
the,
that would just make it all the more likely.
yeah.
So,
The trolls would just get involved and just go, yeah, I think it'd be hilarious if Kim Kardashian West was vice president of the United States. That'd be brilliant. The idea that if Donald Trump was to cop it, she would be next in the line of succession. It's just ridiculous.
it is. I mean, the only plus side of the whole thing is obviously since like 2010, the world has been waiting for the day that China takes over as the #1 superpower.
Yeah.
And it's a strong possibility that it's going to coincide with the next president as their economy keeps growing and growing. So it'll sort of be like, oh, who was the president who let everyone down, let China take over? It was possibly Trump. And then the thing is, in a weird way, even though you've got an arguably communist in brackets state that's going to become the #1 power, arguably suggesting that communism ultimately won the Cold War, everyone's going to be sitting there going, "Oh, thank God for that! It's not Trump." Like, it's China should be putting a stack load of money into his election, because it means they're going to sort of come to power. It's sort of to a round of applause, really, and a big sigh of relief from everybody.
Well, like Donald Trump has the lowest approval ratings of any U.S. presidential nominee in history. Hillary Clinton has the second lowest. It's like, well done, guys. You picked the two worst possible candidates in history to run. It's not like I was saying this to a couple of mates on Monday actually. It's the last election. You had Obama, who had principles. He really wanted to be president and wanted to change the way that everything was done. He was hamstrung by a Republican Congress. And then you had Mitt Romney, who was a firebrand conservative, but people united to his cause. He was neck and neck until the actual vote, where it ended up that Obama did win by a landslide. They had a full-on, brilliant set of debates and fantastic policies on either side. They were going at it tooth and nail right up into the hilt. And you got these two people who are, to be honest with you, a little bit flaccid. Yeah, fine. Donald Trump's florid and he's charismatic, but he's got no basis for any justification of what he says. And Hillary Clinton, who is just a puppet master for everyone who bankrolls her, or puppet mistress rather, I should say, not trying to be sexist or anything like that. But it's just trying to. Everyone who bankrolls her, she's going to go exactly the same way. She's not going to listen to the advice that her former presidential husband will give her, because let's be honest, he wasn't exactly the most faithful of people in the Oval Office. But she's just not going to listen to anything. She's going to listen to the people who bankrolled her to get her where she is. She feels that the presidency is something that she is owed, rather than something she's going to genuinely fight for. And Donald Trump believes the presidency is something that's a laugh, rather than anything that should be taken seriously. Now, if you're an American voter picking between the two of them, I think we need to have a stronger third-party candidate. If someone like Mitt Romney or Bernie Sanders wants to run as a third-party candidate, to be blunt, they probably get more votes. No one likes these two. Seriously, no. I think it's something like 70% of America doesn't like either Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. So 70% of people are just going to stay away from the polls. That's the 70% electorate who are just going to go, well, actually, do you know what? This guy is a third-party candidate I quite like, actually. Bernie Sanders, quite like him. I know I'm a Republican, don't like Trump. I know I'm a Democrat, don't really like Hillary. They're going to vote for him. He should just drop out of the Democrat race and go, yeah, I'm going to vote. I'm going to be a third-party candidate.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I saw Ron give a speech. I mean, I saw Ron speak in America, and he was a good orator. Like he was an interesting guy, sort of a little bit stereotypical in his republicanism, but you know, at least he seems sort of normal. Hillary and Trump. What I like is the way people are like, oh, Trump's tried to be president about 4 or 5 times. Like, so's Hillary. Like, they are essentially the same person. Like, they're not very good at getting elected to be president. They've had about 5 or 6 goes, and they finally mastered it. Hillary is bankrolled by billionaires who aren't her. Trump is bankrolled by a billionaire who is him. Like, it's like that is really Trump's main advantage over Hillary, is he isn't bankrolled by the traditional Koch brothers in that, because A, they seem to hate him, and B, he's rich enough to do it himself. I imagine if he becomes president, she'll be able to bankroll herself for a second electoral term. But it's just they are so scarily similar. But Trump and Sanders, they're sort of in a way similar in that they're both the outsiders. Did you know those two have agreed to a debate?
Have they? Jesus, that's me brave.
Yeah, Sanders and Trump said they debate each other because they are kind of in the same boat. We've mentioned this within the last hour, but both had long periods just getting completely ignored by the media in the hope they would go away. But anyway, we've been doing this for over an hour now. I feel we should wrap it up. Have you got any more firebrand speeches to dole out before we leave?
Sadly, no. That's me done. I mean, I think you know where I'm going to sit with the Brexit referendum. I think that I've got nothing else to add. Nothing intellectual to add anyway. That's for sure.
No, I mean, and I stand by my point, but all it is really is delaying the inevitable by 5, 6 years, somewhere between 5 and 20 years. Like it's only gonna slide one way anyway. Just really depends who signs up for terrible laws. Is it the EU or is it our own government? But anyway, I've forgotten how we normally end these shows, so I'll just say peace out to everybody, and do voting. That's my bit of advice for everybody.
Yeah, go out and vote.
Cheers.
Because it's our democratic right to do so. So just do it.
Yeah, and who knows, in the future it might not be. So, cheers. Thank you very much.